Well, the excitement around weight loss drugs was giving a lift to the healthcare sector. But with a new presidential administration on the way, what's the outlook for the year ahead? Joining us now to discuss is Julian Nonawamden, Vice President for Portfolio Research at TD Asset Management. And Julian, thanks very much for joining us.
Hi, Anthony. Good to be here.
All right, well, let's start with the wider healthcare sector, which despite some positive catalysts continue to underperform. Walk us through that. What's happening there?
Yeah, there's certainly a lot happening. I'd say if we take a step back and think about the market, it rewards two things. The first is growth, and the second is certainty, the lack of uncertainty. And in the case of healthcare, growth this year is expected, has been tepid, and it's going to continue to be rather weak. Earnings growth for healthcare is going to be about flat, zero. This compares to the broader S&P 500, where earnings growth is going to be above 10%. The second piece is uncertainty. We've had a lot of risks that have emerged in the space, namely the change in U.S. administration being a potential concern, the slowdown or the lack of pickup in some of the equipment-related names in the space, and lastly, geopolitics. And so the combination of below-average growth and rising uncertainty has led to 20% plus points of underperformance relative to the market.
Okay, so given that backdrop, there has been some positive news in the market. Certainly weight loss drugs have been doing very well, but have faded recently. What's your outlook for that space going forward?
Yeah, the outlook for the space, I'd say broadly speaking, is very constructive. It's constructive because the weight loss drugs, while that has been the key indication that has attracted a lot of attention, what we're starting to observe is that weight loss drugs are beneficial for other indications, Alzheimer's and a whole host of others, namely a healthy body weight improves overall health conditions. So I think the addressable market of those drugs is expanding, which is a good thing. That's a longer term sort of picture issue. In the here and now, one of the dynamics that's going on is that supply for these drugs is constrained. They're having a lot of difficulty manufacturing these drugs, and therefore the expectations in terms of earnings growth and prescriptions have underwhelmed the market. I mean, it's like, you know, having a scorecard as a kid. I know you have a daughter.
Yes.
When your kid comes with an A+ every day and they suddenly have an A-, the expectation changes, and it's merely the market being disappointed.
Okay. Now, we have a new administration. Of course, with a new administration, there's new leaders for those departments, including the health department in the U.S. What does that mean for healthcare?
It means rising uncertainty. Coming into an election year, healthcare typically underperforms. And as we exit the election year into the next year, as we have more stability in terms of what the policies going forward are going to be like, we've historically seen improving performance from the space. I'd say my expectation is that dynamic is not going to change. However, in this particular case with the new administration, there's a bit more noise and volatility than we've seen historically for two reasons. The first one is we have Robert Kennedy Jr., who has had a pretty vocal and strong stance against pharma companies. And so the question is, how is the HHS going to evolve in terms of funding, et cetera, and how are drug approvals going to change? That uncertainty is a problem for the market. And I think the second thing as well is broadly speaking, the new administration has been sort of vocal and noisy around various geopolitical issues. And right now, sitting in front of the Senate is a Biosecure Act, which is passed in Senate, which is not passed in Senate, is sort of in front of the Senate. And that bill effectively aims to prohibit any U.S. company that has funding from the government to use biotechnologies that are from an adversary, in this case, China particularly. So on the geopolitical front, concerns about the interaction between biotech with China, and on the domestic front, how does healthcare and healthcare companies evolve in a more potentially strict administration?
Okay, so a lot of things in the air, balls in the air there.
Yeah.
With that backdrop, what's the opportunity in healthcare when you look out to 2025?
Well, looking forward, I think going back to this concept of growth and certainty or the lack of uncertainty, in terms of growth, in 2025 should be a better growth year in terms of earnings, partly aided by the weight loss drugs, aided by the recovery in the broader industry, whether it's pharma, life sciences, but also on the certainty front, alleviation of some of these risks that we've talked about on the geopolitical front. The moment the market gets clarity of what the new administration will do and what the policies with respect to biotech with foreign countries, then the market will be able to reprice these securities. And in various pockets of the market, there have been opportunities. The other thing I would highlight is that we've been in a 2-year bull market for the S&P 500. And healthcare historically is a pretty defensive sector. And so as the broader market kind of starts taking a breather, we'll likely see some renewed enthusiasm for the healthcare sector, partly idiosyncratic, but partly with what's going on elsewhere.